we moved to Oak Hollow Estates looking for peace, not politics. After 2 decades of service in the NYPD, my wife Natalie Carter had just been appointed police chief of Spring County, a well-earned promotion and a fresh chapter. We'd found a charming home at the end of a shaded cul-de-sac, brick porch, cedar shutters, a swing that creaked just enough to feel like home. I had retired early from a construction business, happy to focus on rebuilding our lives, maybe even pick up woodworking, but on day one, we met her. Karen Langford, HOA president, self-appointed neighborhood guardian, and apparently the unofficial welcome committee. She arrived with military precision clipboard tucked tight to her chest, lips pursed in permanent judgment, and a forced smile that didn't touch her eyes. Natalie was sitting on the porch in an old hoodie and joggers, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. Karen looked horrified, like she'd caught someone barbecuing a raccoon on the lawn. "Good morning," Karen chirped, in a tone that sounded more like a warning than a greeting. "I'm Karen Langford, president of the Oak Hollow Homeowners Association. Just doing my rounds." Natalie nodded politely. "Morning." Karen squinted at Natalie's NYPD hoodie like it was a political statement. "I should remind you, we have a dress code for shared spaces. No slogans, uniforms, or aggressive messaging." Natalie raised an eyebrow. "It's a sweatshirt, I'm a cop." Karen's expression didn't change. "Yes, well, we try to keep the environment neutral. Children live here." I watched from the living room window, my fingers gripping the curtain. I knew that tone, the kind of woman who wields rules like weapons and imagines herself a sheriff in a neighborhood of outlaws. And she had just met the one person least likely to be intimidated by her clipboard. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen escalated her campaign of control. We received written warnings about our garbage bins being placed out more than 12 hours prior to collection. A violation notice appeared for having non-compliant outdoor furniture, our porch swing, which had apparently been painted an unapproved shade of eggshell, and when a delivery truck briefly parked with 2 wheels on the grass, we got an emailed screenshot within the hour. "She's trying to provoke us," I muttered, reading the 5th citation. Natalie, unbothered, sipped her coffee, let her sheet. "That a long fuse. Years on the force had taught her when to act and, more importantly, when not to." But Karen wasn't finished. One Thursday afternoon, Natalie was home alone. I was in the city picking up lumber. She had just finished folding laundry upstairs when the doorbell rang 3 sharp chimes, followed by aggressive knocking. Through the ring cam, she saw Karen standing on the porch, peering through the sidelight windows, clutching that omnipresent clipboard. Natalie sighed and went back to folding socks. 10 minutes later, she heard the sirens. 2 patrol cars pulled up to the curb, lights flashing but no urgency in their steps. Natalie met them on the porch. And collected what seems to be the issue. "Officers." The younger of the two glanced between her and his notepad. "Ma'am, we received a call reporting suspicious behavior at this address. The caller claimed the resident refused to answer the door and may be squatting." Natalie blinked. "Squatting? In my own house?" Karen stepped forward from the shadows of a nearby hydrangea bush like she was part of a sting operation. "I had no choice." She insisted she wouldn't answer. "For all I knew, someone could have been in danger. We have protocols." Natalie tilted her head. "Did it occur to you that maybe I didn't feel like entertaining uninvited guests?" Karen gasped. "You live in a community, young lady. You have responsibilities." Natalie reached into her back pocket, pulled out a leather case, and flipped it open. "Chief Natalie Carter, Spring County Police Department." Silence fell over the porch. The younger officer blinked. Karen's face turned a shade of white I'd only ever seen in freshly painted drywall. "I was going to wait until the next HOA meeting to introduce myself," Natalie said, sliding the badge back into her pocket. "But I suppose this works." Karen tried to backpedal. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe." Natalie smiled, though her eyes didn't. "Of course, we all want to feel safe." The officers apologized and left. Karen lingered, frozen like a statue, before slowly walking away, clipboard clutched tightly to her chest. That night, as Natalie and I sat on our outlaw eggshell swing, she turned to me with a smirk. "She just realized she brought the cops on the cops." I laughed. But I had a feeling this was only the beginning. Karen wasn't done, and neither were we. If anyone thought Karen would back down after the badge reveal, they didn't know Karen. By the following morning, retaliation arrived in the form of a crisp white envelope duct taped to our mailbox. Inside was a formal citation notice from the HOA. Apparently, our mailbox was exactly 2.5 inches taller than regulation height. It was, as she wrote in bold red pen, a potential hazard for uniform community aesthetics and mail carrier efficiency. Natalie held the letter like it was a comedy script. "Guess the real threat to this neighborhood isn't crime. It's post-mounted tyranny." I tried to laugh, but I was fuming. "She called the police on you, and now she's citing the mailbox. Is this some kind of HOA Cold War?" Natalie didn't flinch. Let her stack the paper. I want her to feel confident. That's when people get sloppy. Over the next week we became a favorite target. Every day brought a new letter. "Porch camera unauthorized, violates the aesthetics of entryways." Trash bin left visible between 2:10 and 2:17 p.m. Police cruiser presence may cause neighborhood anxiety. Consider alternate parking. It was absurd. Natalie's unmarked apartment's SUV parked neatly in our own driveway was now apparently a disturbance. Meanwhile, Karen's own car, a peeling beige Lexus with a broken taillight, sat diagonally across her lawn like it had been abandoned after a police chase. The pettiness didn't end at paper. We started noticing sideways glances at the grocery store, cold shoulders at community events. A few of Karen's more loyal board members like Vince Holloway and Sheila Therese began whispering anytime we entered a room. Karen, it seemed, was spinning a narrative. She's using her position to bully the board. Someone told me at the HOA park while I watered the community garden. Karen says she's using city resources for revenge. Natalie could have squashed it in a second. All she had to do was send a cease and desist, maybe pull a few legal strings, but she didn't. She just smiled, collected every citation, and kept going to work like nothing was happening. I'm not going to fight her on the sidewalk, she told me one night. She's trying to make me lose it. But I've been screamed at by gang leaders. Karen's just noise. But Karen wasn't just noise, she was organizing. 2 weeks later, during the monthly HOA meeting at the clubhouse, she made her move. Natalie and I sat quietly in the back, sipping lukewarm punch. The room buzzed with whispered speculation as Karen stepped to the front with her signature clipboard and a triumphant gleam in her eyes. Before we begin tonight's agenda, she said, I want to address a matter of community concern. Several residents have expressed discomfort with the conduct and presence of a certain new resident, one who holds a powerful position in law enforcement. Whispers rippled through the room. Natalie remained still, her arms crossed. I clenched my jaw. Karen continued, this board has received complaints about intimidation, surveillance, and undue influence. We have rules to protect our families, not to be selectively enforced by someone who carries a badge home. Natalie stood slowly, calm/composed. If you're accusing me of abusing my role, you better be ready to back it up. Karen took a half step back, but didn't falter. You don't scare me. Titles don't mean anything here. The HOA has jurisdiction over this community. Someone in the back chuckled, and I recognized Marcus Bell, an army vet who had no love for Karen's reign. Natalie didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Karen, you think the HOA is above city ordinance. You think writing tickets and playing neighborhood dictator gives you control. But what you're doing, what you've always done, is harassment. And now you're doing it to a public official. Karen smirked. If you don't like the rules, you can leave. Natalie's eyes didn't move from Karen's. I'm not going anywhere, but you might want to start packing. A hush fell over the room. Karen tried to laugh, but it came out thin and choked. She quickly moved on with the meeting agenda, fumbling her notes. Natalie sat back down without another word, sipping her punch like it was a closing argument that night. As we walked home under the porch-lit sidewalks, Natalie said quietly, she's pushed every boundary, and now she's trying to frame it as a community revolt. I nodded. She thinks she's winning. Natalie's voice was cool. Good. Let her think that because the storm wasn't coming, it was already here, and Karen had no idea how deep she was in. Natalie had never been one to strike first, but when she did, it was with precision. For weeks, she had quietly gathered evidence. Every baseless citation, every targeted action, every slanderous whisper Karen orchestrated. And most importantly, she'd been documenting Karen's violations, ones that went unchecked because, until now, no one had dared hold her accountable. People like Karen thrive on fear, Natalie said one morning as she slid a flash drive into her laptop. But the law doesn't care about her HOA throne. It cares about facts. Inside that flash drive was gold. Footage from our porch camera showing Karen trespassing on our property multiple times. Screenshots of emails where she threatened fines for non-existent infractions. Public records showing she approved reimbursements from HOA funds without board consent. And perhaps most damning, proof she had been using HOA money to pay her nephew, an unlicensed contractor, to install hidden surveillance cameras in community areas. This isn't just harassment, I said, flipping through the evidence. It's fraud. Natalie nodded. Exactly, and I'm not taking this to the HOA board, I'm taking it downtown. She filed a report with the Spring County Office of Regulatory Affairs and forwarded key documents to the Fair Housing Committee within 48 hours. Oak Hollow Estates was flagged for an emergency compliance audit. The inspectors arrived on a Thursday morning, unannounced. Karen was mid-brunch in her sunroom when two city officials knocked on her door, badges gleaming. By noon, they were combing through the clubhouse records, surveying common areas, snapping photos of improperly filed permits, and flagging violations that had been ignored for years, many of which Karen had covered up. Word spread fast. By evening, Natalie and I were sitting on the porch as neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering over fences. Vince Holloway, Karen's longtime board ally, drove past without waving for the first time in months. Marcus Bell came over with a smirk. So, they're finally seeing the Queen's castle as termites. Natalie chuckled. Justice is slow, but it doesn't miss. The real fallout came 3 days later. An emergency HOA meeting was called. Mandatory attendance. The usual potluck and politeness were gone. The clubhouse buzzed with tension. Natalie stood in the back, in civilian clothes, arms folded, calm as ever. Karen walked in like a CEO facing her board of directors. She tried to speak first, but Sheila Therese stood up and cut her off. We've received notice from the city. Karen, your use of HOA funds is under formal investigation. You approved unlicensed work, violated surveillance laws, and failed to disclose financial decisions to the board. Karen's face went pale. You're siding with her, she spat, pointing toward Natalie. She's orchestrated this entire witch hunt. Sheila's voice was firm. No, you did this to yourself. Marcus stood. This is a vote for removal. Effective immediately. The vote wasn't even close. 9 in favor, 0 against, 1 abstention. Karen, glaring as if the room had betrayed her. She can't remove me, Karen hissed, eyes darting. I built this community. Natalie stepped forward then, slowly, a badge tucked away, but her authority impossible to ignore. You built a house of mirrors, she said, and now everyone sees through them. Karen stormed out, muttering something about lawyers and defamation. No one followed her. That night, for the first time, the clubhouse lights stayed on long after dark. Neighbors laughed, shared drinks, and passed around plates of food like something had finally cracked open. Natalie and I stood by the clubhouse door, watching. She looked peaceful, lighter. You didn't even need your badge to take her down, I said. Nope, she replied. Just her own rules. But what about her threats, the legal talk? Natalie shrugged. Let her try. I've dealt with worse than a paper tyrant with a clipboard. I laughed. She really thought she could scare a cop by calling the cops. Natalie raised her glass. And that's the beauty of karma. Sometimes it shows up wearing a badge. We toasted under the stars while the neighborhood finally exhaled. But one question still lingered. Karen had been dethroned, but was she truly gone? Natalie knew the answer. She'll try something, she said. People like her don't know how to stay quiet. Her eyes narrowed as she looked toward Karen's darkened house. But next time, she won't see me coming. Karen may have lost her throne, but she hadn't surrendered her war. The day after the vote, her beige Lexus vanished from the curb. Rumors flew. Some said she was consulting lawyers. Others claimed she was going to sue the HOA board for defamation. One neighbor spotted her at City Hall, waving a folder and demanding a hearing with the zoning commission. But by then, her influence was eroding faster than late-season leaves. Without the power of her clipboard and her grip on the board, she was just another resident with a grudge, and suddenly everyone saw her for what she was. That weekend, Marcus Bell stepped up as interim HOA president. He hosted a block-wide barbecue in the park, grilling burgers while his golden retriever chased kids through sprinklers. No citations were issued, no inspections performed. Laughter filled the cul-de-sac for the first time in weeks. Natalie and I arrived just after sunset. The grill smoke curled through the trees, lights strung across lawn chairs, and music pulsed from a neighbor's Bluetooth speaker. Sheila Therese approached us with a mason jar of sweet tea and a smile that, for once, wasn't tense. I owe you both an apology, she said, for being silent while Karen stomped over everyone. Natalie took the tea and offered a hand. You spoke when it counted. That's what matters. As the evening wore on, neighbors came over, one by one. Some just to say thank you. Others to share their own horror stories. Racks confiscated for being improperly stored. Garden gnomes cited as visual hazards, even a child's. Lemonade stand shut down for lacking temporary vendor clearance. Karen had ruled by isolation, but now connection was blossoming where fear once stood still. We kept our porch camera active. 2 weeks later, it caught her across our lawn at 5:12 a.m., her hair pulled into a messy bun, a hoodie covering most of her face. She crouched near our fence line, stuck something into the flower bed, and disappeared down the street. Natalie waited until dawn. Coffee in hand, she walked out to the garden and found a crudely handwritten note tucked into a Ziploc bag. Buried beneath the tulips, it read, "This isn't over. You may wear the badge, but you don't own this place. You're a guest in my world." Natalie handed it to me without a word. New panic, new outrage, just cold, deliberate calm. Time to finish it, she said. She contacted the city's housing mediator. Between the surveillance footage, the trespassing note, and the ongoing investigation into Karen's financial mismanagement, the city was ready to act. A formal no-contact order was issued. Karen was barred from contacting Natalie or attending HOA functions for 6 months. The housing board voted to strip her of all administrative privileges. She was fined for misappropriation and trespass. Her mailbox, ironically, had to be lowered to comply with the very height restrictions she'd once weaponized. The final blow came when the city forced her to remove her illegal backyard pergola, an unpermitted structure she'd proudly hosted. Wine nights under 4 years. Within days, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. Neighbors cheered. A few even brought lawn chairs to watch the demolition crew disassemble her pergola beam by beam. The morning Karen left, she didn't say goodbye. She drove away alone, her car packed to the ceiling, eyes locked forward, but Natalie stood on our porch, arms crossed, watching her go, not with triumph, but with quiet resolution. She could have had peace, she said. She chose control instead. By summer's end, Oak Hollow Estates was reborn. The rules remained, but the fear didn't. Children chalked smiley faces on sidewalks. Neighbors planted flowers in shades not listed on any pallet. Marcus replaced the HOA newsletter with a community forum where actual concerns were heard and resolved at. Natalie, ever discreet, never mentioned her role in Karen's downfall. She didn't need credit. Her victory wasn't in speeches or spotlight. It was in the silence. No more knock-on-the-door nonsense. No more citations taped like threats. Just calm. One evening, I found her on the porch swing, the same one Karen had once tried to ban for being nonsense. Natalie rocked gently, sipping coffee, watching the sky blush orange. Regret anything? I asked, joining her. She smiled, slow and steady. Just that I didn't plant roses sooner. They do better than tulips. We laughed. Oak Hollow was finally home, not because we fought for control, but because we reclaimed our peace. And if Karen ever tried to return, well, the chief would be waiting.